Hey everyone, John here. Welcome back to another Sapphire tutorial. This time we're going to take a look at how you can use UltraZap to create some stylized flames. Let's take a look. So starting here in Blender, and if you've downloaded the project file which we've made available, go ahead and open that up and we'll do a quick walkthrough. So it's a very simple scene. I've just done a quick model here, and the reason I created this scene was because I thought it was a great way to demonstrate the stylized UltraZap fire. It's kind of like a medieval look, and we've got these torches here. And you can see above the torches are a couple of lights. And when I click on that down here in the timeline, you can see I've added a noise modifier, and that's making the lights just flicker a little bit, which looks really good when the UltraZap flames are in place, because it looks as if the flames are, flickering and the light is affecting the surrounding geometry. So other than just a fairly simple camera move, the other things to point out here are the passes. I'm rendering to OpenEXR, and I've just rendered out the glossy passes. I think I just used a direct pass in After Effects, an ambient occlusion pass, and also the Cryptomatte pass. Okay. Cryptomatte's important because I wanted to be able to isolate the top of the torch, so I can use that as a matte for the bottom of the flames. We'll look at that in a moment. Textures were created in Substance Painter, and the whole thing was rendered out to OpenEXR. You might want to go ahead and render out that sequence, and then you can import that into After Effects. Okay. And before we go across to After Effects, the only other thing I want to point out is that I installed the Export Adobe After Effects.jsx add-on, and back here in Blender, just came up and chose Export and Adobe After Effects. So we'll take a look at the result of that in a second as well. Now, if you've opened up the project file, you're going to see that the source sequence is disconnected because you don't have my render. So go ahead and double click on that, locate your render and replace that, and then everything should be good to go. Let's break this down. Inside Scene Base, this is where I've just sort of set up my passes from Blender. So here's the main pass, the combined pass. If we just go to our Effect Controls panel, you can see this is the combined pass. And I'm using the extractor effect to be able to see that. Without that, of course, you won't see anything, just black because it's an OpenEXR. Now above that, we have the ambient occlusion pass, okay, and you can see I've just put a soft feathered mask on this. What I was trying to sort of go for with this was a sort of, a cartoon sort of comic book look without going, fully half tone and making it look really comic-like. I wanted to give it that kind of feel, so it was definitely stylized. Obviously, this doesn't look realistic, so definitely a stylized look, but not super heavy comic book look. So I've used the ambient occlusion as a pass just to give a kind of a vignette look without using just a typical vignette effect. If we just isolate that, this is actually quite interesting. Take a look at this. If I just turn off this mask. I love the ambient occlusion pass. It's such an interesting look, isn't it? It looks like it's made of plastic. But if we just undo that, just by masking that out and then just using the multiply blend mode over the combined pass, we just darken around the outside. So it's kind of like a vignette, but you don't lose too much of that detail, which is really nice. Okay, so that's using the ambient occlusion pass. Now, I did make glossy floorboards, but I felt that they weren't quite glossy enough. So for that, I've used another layer, and this is the Gloss Direct Pass in Extractor. So you can see how that's just affecting the floorboards. And the reason it's affecting just the floorboards is because I've used Cryptomatte to isolate just that. So let's just select that and come up to colors. And there's my Cryptomatte colors. You can see I've selected the floor. We'll just bring that back to matted RGBA. And that creates the alpha matte for that layer. Okay. Cryptomatte's so cool. It's just so easy to control where your mattes are and how they work using Cryptomatte. So above that, we have a little bit of gloss on the door, on the metal here for the torch and the torch holder. See, this is also the gloss direct pass. Just to boost that a little bit, give it a little more brightness. So no crazy compositing here, just a couple of passes just to enhance that. Turn that all on and turn off the matte, and that's what we've got. So let's go back to the main comp. And there's a couple of effects applied to this. You can see it's quite a big difference. I've got a proxy enabled. Let me just turn that off and come back to my effects. So we've got two effects applied, okay? Exposure and sharpen. So that's, just turn off the flames. That's the look from the previous comp with a little bit of exposure. So just boosting the exposure and just crushing down the offsets and a little bit of gamma correction. So that really sort of brightens it up and gives it that nice sort of almost like cartoony look, which is enhanced by Sapphire Sharpen. I'm just going to roll right in so you can see this is quite subtle. So just sharpening up a little bit. And that also helps give it that sort of stylized cartoony look. So not a lot of treatment as far as the cartoon look, just a bit of exposure, a bit of sharpen, and I think overall that looks quite nice. So let's next take a look at the flames. And the flames are really what this tutorial is all about. I actually sort of came on it by accident. I was playing around with UltraZap and thinking maybe there's a different way to use UltraZap. And my experiments actually ended up with the flame look, and it's much better than I expected. So let's dig down into this. We'll go right into Flame Right, and we'll go into UltraZap Flames. So this is the base UltraZap comp, okay? There's the beautiful flames. So let's select layer 3. We'll just solo that. And let's take a look. I'm going to turn everything off. So I have a black solid. And we have UltraZap. Okay. Now, obviously I've used a lot of different settings to create this. So we will come back to this, but let's just turn on this layer first. So this is the default UltraZap. Okay, so obviously looks like lightning. I just want to go through the rough strokes about how I sort of hit on this look. And just select that. Obviously the first thing is just to sort of position the UltraZap. It has different control points, got different points here. And these were quite useful in sort of changing the shape or the direction of the flames. You know, you could even animate these so the flames sort of, you know, move left and right. If you didn't want to have them, you only wanted to have the start and end, you could turn off 0.3. So then you've got it nice and straight like that. So basically brought that down to the bottom of the comp and started playing with the bolt width. So really thickening that up. You can see how the glow is getting in the way. So I didn't actually use Ultra Glow at this stage. I used Ultra Glow later in the sequence in a different comp. So was fattening this up, bring it up like, you know, something like that, right? Ooh, then it starts to kind of look a little more fiery, right? And see how it moves like fire? It kind of jiggles. And this is what kind of gave me the idea that UltraZap might be good for flames. It's got the bolt length as well, so you can bring the length down. Obviously, all of these can be animated. And it's got a curve amplitude, so bringing that down to 0 gives you a straight line. I didn't put too much curve in it. Also taper, so a little fatter at the bottom, but a little more tapered at the top like that. You can see what's happening there, right? And, you know, obviously playing with the colors. So going for, you know, kind of an orange and slightly different there. Maybe, and this is not the final version, of course, but this is kind of what I did. So maybe that could go a little lighter. A bit yellow, so that sort of thing. And to mix it up a little bit, to make it look a little more detailed, just add more bolts. So there's 2 bolts, right? And you can add 3 bolts. So you can see it starts to get a little more detailed. But see these white areas? This is the branchiness. So we've got white branches at the moment. I actually made mine, you know, fairly light to add a bit of lightness into there, and just adjusted that, which added a little more variation And you can see I don't want to have long branches. It looks a bit weird. So having really short branches just gives that a sort of a bit of color change on the inside of the flames. Right, so this is how I did it. And there's also a secondary bolt, right? So you can turn that on too and play with the secondary bolt. So, you know, obviously that's looking a little weird there, but you play with the bolt width and that moves slightly differently as well. So that's how I approached it. And once again, keeping Ultra Glow turned off. So let's just turn that off. I'm going to actually reset that for you. Reset. And this has come down to my one. So this is where I got to with mine, okay? Exactly the same approach. If I just press U twice, we can see what I've adjusted. And there's not that many settings that I've adjusted. Width, length, wrinkle, taper, start and end, and vary width. Also wiggle speed too. I've knocked that back quite a lot because that's what's giving the movement. If you make that 0, then it's just not going to move, right? It's just completely stationary. So those are my settings. You can take a look at those. Now, we have a second UltraZap here. I thought this was looking good, but I thought I could make it look a little more realistic by putting some more lighter flames down the bottom here. So if I turn that on, there you go. So that's exactly basically what I did before, but I've just made it slightly shorter and changed the color. So that's sitting below that and it's looking a little more like fire now. And in order to be able to move all of these together, because they're two separate effects, I've just linked, you can see down here, I've linked with expressions, just linked the start point or all of the actual effect points to the top UltraZap. So that way when I select the top one and move it around, then the bottom one moves with it. Okay? It just allows me to reposition that a little more easier. It doesn't make a huge lot of difference because this is being positioned in 3D space in another comp. But I just thought having them together like that just makes this a little more flexible as a setup, as a rig. Okay, so that's the two UltraZap effects. And there's also a set matte effect. I didn't like this shape down here. I thought this looked unrealistic. I wanted more of a flame-like shape down here. So I actually used another one. So this is another UltraZap down the bottom here, right? Slightly different settings. Just turn that off. That's my matte. And if I turn set matte on, I'm using this as a matte for this layer, right? Using set matte. So using take matte from layer, matte. And that's cutting that out. So it's getting rid of that weird end part. Okay. And in order to get a better shape with this, I've actually used a mesh warp adjustment layer. So you can see that's an adjustment layer. And if we select that effect, notice how I've just dragged that just to shape my flames a little better. Just to sort of pinch it because I wanted this to be more of a torch shape rather than thick at the bottom because it's going to be sitting in a torch. So just using a little bit of mesh warp just to reshape that. And that's the basic UltraZap shape, right? So let's just come back into flames and dust. So in here, I've got two UltraZap effects. I've got one at the bottom, which is our original one. Just positioned it down the bottom of this long composition. And the reason it's long is because I've used S-Dust. We'll look at that in a moment. Now I've duplicated that and I've used the screen blend mode. Okay, so there's the second one. So it's just been scaled down slightly. And once again, this adds even more flamey detail. Just notice that I have offset it slightly. You don't want it to be exactly the same. So I've just offset it by sliding the layer and it gives us that. Very nice. And all of this fiery movement comes from the wiggle in the UltraZap effect. And as mentioned, I've used Sapphire Dust just in this long composition to give us a couple of, just a couple of embers that sort of fly off it. I didn't want too many. You can see in Sapphire Dust, I've just got number of points set to 20. So we get the occasional ember that comes up. I thought that was a little more interesting in the final comp. And Sapphire Dust doesn't have any motion blur, So I actually use Sapphire Blur Directional. Just turn that off, and you can see there's no blur at all, but a little bit of super fast Sapphire Blur Directional. Because these are basically going directly up, I thought I could get away with that and make them look a little more realistic. I could have used CC Forced Motion Blur, but it's so slow. This is way faster, and it actually looks better. Okay, so that's this comp, all set up, ready to be positioned. So we'll come into Flames Positioned, and let's take a look at that. Aha! So here we've got our camera from Blender, and we've got two lights. Okay, so in order to bring those in, I chose File, Scripts, Run Script File, and just going to navigate to where mine is. And there it is there, door03.jsx. So I opened that, imported, and here's all of my objects from Blender, all perfectly set up. It's so easy. My camera's got all the keyframes, and there's the two lights, the ones that I set up to flicker inside of Blender. So they're the two that I used inside of After Effects. And very simply, in order to position the flames, I've just used a simple expression. And I've used this in the Craven the Hunter tutorial as well, which may or may not have been released before this tutorial, but it's exactly the same setup and exactly the same workflow. So by moving the anchor point, let me just go Shift A, just getting the anchor point into position. And just dragging the Y value there. And setting that expression for the position. Very simple expression. This is the ToComp expression. So I just copied and pasted that from the internet. That positions those flames right on those points in 3D space, okay? Because here in the expression, I've named the layer that I want to reference. So torch right A, and here, torch left A, okay? And that pops them into place. And of course, because we have the camera in here and these are attached to lights, then they move with the light, which is being repositioned based on the camera movement. And of course, back in our main comp, that matches this scene because this is the render using the same camera. Now, to finish off the look at the flames, I've used a couple of effects. One to make sure it's composited properly in the shot, and another one to sharpen it to give it more of a cartoon look. Let's come over to the effect control panel. So we've got set matte and set sharpen. So I'm just going to turn both of those off. First of all, let's talk about this torch matte. So this is obviously a matte for the top part of the torch. And once again, using Cryptomatte. So there's my Cryptomatte. And notice when I turned off Matte Choker, the back part of it appeared again. So let's leave that turned off, and we'll come and turn that off. And we'll come back to here, and we'll turn on Set Matte. So notice how the back part of the torch appeared again because we turned off Set Matte in the torch matte layer. And what that means is that you've got this whole bowl of the torch sitting in front of the flame. So by using, let's just do it here. By using the set matte effect, or the matte choker effect, sorry, on here, we're just eating away at that alpha channel, or the matte that's being created, which is creating the alpha. And that way, only this front part of the bowl is sitting on top, and it looks like the back part of the bowl is behind the flames. Okay, so it was quite a nice thing to do, just be able to adjust the matte just using matte choker, because it's only a thin area, only a few pixels there, so that was pretty easy. So that's now sitting in front. And the reason we're even using that matte is because it's more obvious over here. If we turn it off again, you can see the bottom of the flames, okay? We want it to look like the flames are coming from inside the bowl, right? Like that. Okay, so a little bit of compositing there. And a little bit of Sapphire Sharpen, just to give it more of a cartoony look. So you can see by using Sapphire Sharpen, it's enhancing the edges a little bit more. And I thought that made it look a little bit more cartoon-like, a little bit more comic book-like. quite effective. And really, just to finish off the entire look, this is where I added Ultra Glow. Rather than applying it to the UltraZap layer, as we saw, I've used it on adjustment layer above everything. Okay, so by using a beautiful soft Ultra Glow pass, we're not only affecting the flames, but we're affecting everything around there, and it's looking really nice. It really enhances that look. So quite subtle, but you can see how it's really glowing out in this area here. And that wouldn't have happened if we just applied it to the flames. It's also quite obvious there as well, over the bowl, right? It really goes quite orange. And last of all, just a little bit of Sapphire Bleach Bypass, which is a color grading effect. Bleach Bypass is, most famous for war films like Saving Private Ryan. Pulls out some of the chroma. I just use it here as an adjustment layer, just to give everything a little bit more contrast, but also pull out a little bit of the color. You can see how it increases the contrast, darkens it down a little bit, and I just felt that was a nice finishing effect for that. Once again, it's very subtle, and it just finishes the look. And here's the final look again. So surprisingly, I think UltraZap is pretty effective for creating fire, and I'd love to know what you think, so please leave a comment. If you'd like me to dive into anything deeper, also leave a comment. If you want to learn more about Sapphire or any of the Boris Effects products, visit boriseffects.com, where you can also download trial versions. For now, this is John. I'll see you in the next tutorial.